Good afternoon. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to shock you. I have come to life. I'm going to say a few things to you. So my name is Rob Smith. There's a clue on the screen, so I usually follow the clues that appear on the screen, do what I'm told. And I'm just going to share a few things about ThinkOn and how we apply thinking to business results and to enabling change, because basically those are the two things that we do as an organization. But we started with the title of Don't Just Do Think, because I'm sure you're all aware of that saying that goes something like, don't just stand there, do something. Well, we would like to sort of flip that slightly, because there's a lot of activity that happens in a lot of organizations where people tend to go into activity mode before they perhaps engage the brain. So we're sort of just putting the brakes on that a little bit and suggesting, how about not doing for a second and doing some thinking before you do some doing? So the case for that is basically this. There's an awful lot of stuff going on. Look around you. Learning can be accessed from all sorts of different places and all sorts of different styles. There is so much of it. It's hopefully all good, but how do we sort some of that stuff out? And I don't know about you, but sometimes when there's so much stuff around, there's a feeling of being a little bit overwhelmed. What is it that I would like to apply? Where do I get it from? What's the source that I would like to use? How does one thing link to another thing? It could be, in some circumstances and some situations, and with some suppliers, maybe we're guilty of that as well, just a little bit too confusing. So what I'm going to share with you, if you will allow me, is to sort of take complexity and turn it a little bit more simple. Let's deal with some simple concepts. Let's deal with some simple applications, because as far as we're concerned, in our experience the last 18 years as a consulting company, simple works. People understand simple, and if it can be applied in a pragmatic way, then actually it becomes useful in the workplace. So we're going to deal with some simple learning content and some simple learning techniques. And if you want to know more, there's an opportunity for a few questions afterwards, but also, and here comes the advert, we are just 2 stands away on C6, and there are a couple of my colleagues around who have got a couple of freebies, but you can only get freebies if there's a little bit of interest. So if there's no interest, no problem. Stand C6 is over there. So don't just do, think. At ThinkOn, we believe that the thinking that you do impacts the actions that you take, which in turn impacts the results that you get. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I'd like to start with the results piece. I hope you would agree, and there's me leading you, I hope you'd agree that every organization expects results. Your line managers expect results from you. You expect your people who report to you to actually produce results for you as well. So there's an expectation around results. Fine, simple to take on board. To get results, we need to take some actions. Those actions are triggered by thinking. However aware or otherwise we might be, those actions are triggered by thinking. And the importance of this loop for us is not to get caught into what we call the insanity cycle. Because if you're not getting the results that you want, typically procedures change, actions change, things change. There's always somebody, well-meaning, saying, got to do something different. Come on, let's go and do something different. Which is logical. But actually, to drive a result, we need to think. Because if we don't think, we can get into this little insanity loop of, oh, we haven't got what we wanted, let's do something different. Test it again. Oh, let's do something different. Test it again. Not really a comfortable place to be. So, if you want a different result, yes, you have to take different actions. But to take different actions, what we're suggesting to you is, and it's a simple concept, do some different thinking. So I'd like to just share with you very quickly, and we're going to get you to do a little bit of work in just a second, okay? You sort of maybe have had that thought initially, why have I got a piece of paper, why have I got a pen? There's something going on here. We are going to get you to do a little bit of work, but it's for your benefit. 18 years ago, we did a piece of research into what we now call a bit of common sense. Key thinking principles that people have as their subconscious way of sorting things out. Planning things, identifying goals, wanting to achieve stuff. 7 very simple principles. And I'm just going to enlighten you on those very, very quickly. I'm going to go straight up the middle to begin with. There's a logic to the fact that we need to have some goals, we need to take some personal responsibility for achieving those goals, and we need to take some action. Otherwise, those goals will just remain a goal, or maybe even a dream, if the goal wasn't very clearly defined. Perfect. If it was, however, that simple, a lot more of us would be a lot more successful a lot more of the time. So it's not as simple as that. And the research that we carried out here in the UK, 4,000 hours worth of material later, some consistent messages came our way. And those consistent messages are, those 3 things are important, but they have to be supported. And the first 2 things that they get supported by are something that we call reason why. You might call your motivation or your passion for doing something, and your self-belief, your confidence in your ability to do it. So some of that stuff needs to be measured in the first place. How much motivation and how much confidence have you got? But equally, if you haven't got enough, you need some tools and some techniques to increase that, because the higher your self-belief, the higher your reason why, studies have shown you're more likely, a greater probability of achieving what it is you're setting out to achieve. So, there's some stuff to do to begin with. Over on the right-hand side, there is also a necessity to get other people involved to help you, and also to do some planning, to think about some possibilities, to think about some priorities, putting some plans in place. So with that in mind, what I'm going to invite you to do is I'm going to invite you to look at all of that, and I'm going to lead you through some very simple questions. On your sheet of paper, in the big rectangular box at the top, it asks you a question, and I'm going to ask you to answer that question in the box. Choose something that you would like to achieve. Something that might be a goal, something that might be work-related, not work-related, learning-related, doesn't matter, but it's personal to you. You're only going to get benefit from this if you choose something that is relevant to you, okay? I'm not going to ask you to hand this in. It doesn't come back to teacher, so it's private to you. Go ahead and just, as clearly as you can, state in that top box something that's important to you to achieve. Just write it down. Simple sentence. I'm going to work to approximately half of you in the room, okay? So you'll get the idea if you're writing too slowly. And if anybody's in the audience going, I don't think I've got anything to achieve, fantastic. Please come and see me on stand C6 afterwards, because I'd really love to know the secret of your success. Okay, now we're going to do some quick evaluation. You can see that there's some explanation around that framework written on your sheet of paper. It talks to you about having a strong reason why, having high self-belief, defining your goal. So what I'm going to ask you to do, in order, number 1, right, so that you're going to give yourself, in box number 1, a score. And so that we can use something simple, a common language for all of us, I'm going to ask you to do the simple stuff of, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your score, okay? So there's no zeros. 1 is the lowest score you can have. 10 is the maximum. So the first one, I believe, asks you, so how strong is your reason for wanting to do this thing on a scale of 1 to 10? Put that score out of 10 in the first box, the first numbered box. Right, so number 1, you're going to have a score, something out of 10. Excellent. And don't worry, this is not you being scientific, okay? It's your gut feel. Gut feel is to be relied upon here. Second box is talking to you about, or the second principle is talking to you about having a defined goal. So how clearly defined at this current point in time is your goal? And just give yourself as accurate a score as you feel you can. 10 is your goal is so superbly written down or identified that there's no ambiguity in it whatsoever. It's really clear. 1 might be, actually it's very woolly. You've only just thought it up now because you're feeling the pressure of eyes on you. Okay? Give yourself a number. The third principle is about possibilities and priorities, actually having a plan. Okay? So I'm going to ask you in box number 3, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much possibility thinking, how much planning, prioritizing have you currently done around this thing that you want to achieve? Okay? Not what you're planning to do, but what have you done so far? Of course, if this is a brand new thing that you've only just thought of, the score is going to be lower. Okay? Then I believe it talks to you about a measure of self-belief. So, box number 4, that's what we're going to assess. How much confidence do you have about your ability to achieve that thing you've got written down on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 is you have no doubt you can achieve it. 1, you have not a hope of achieving it. What's your number? Somewhere in between. Then we look at something called personal responsibility. And personal responsibility, again, you're looking at a scale of 1 to 10. And I'm going to ask you, how much personal responsibility are you prepared to take to make this happen? And you can use a sliding scale if you want to, but here's me being challenging. If you're prepared to take personal responsibility, the answer is yes, that's a 10. If you're not prepared to take personal responsibility, that's a no, that's a 1. But if that makes you a bit uncomfortable, then you use a sliding scale, that's fine. As I say, I'm not going to look at your sheet of paper, so you're safe, all right? And then we have a final score to make, and your final score is that one over there about involving others. To what extent have you already put into your planning the extent to which you're going to involve others in helping you to achieve this goal? 10 is, yep, done all of that thinking, you've identified the people, you're away. 1 is, perhaps you've not even done any of the thinking at all. You might also have a low score if your mindset is, I don't need other people, I'm going to do this all by myself, it's something for me to do. And I'm not criticizing that thought, I'm just bringing that to your awareness. Okay, now, you know how sometimes you attend seminars and you go to meetings and they go, you're not allowed to use your mobile phone? You are allowed to use your mobile phone, unless you're really good at maths. So I'm going to ask you to do some calculation. You can see that you've actually got a bit of a score sheet underneath the 6 things that you have just actually looked at. Sorry, there's a space for you to actually do some working out. And what I'm going to ask you to do is not to add up those components, but to actually multiply them all together. Because when we first started doing this research, we thought that we were going to find something that was quite linear, quite logical. You have to do something and then something else and then something else. Actually, this is a system for thinking, which is why the diagram has lots of connections to it. Your thoughts, your subconscious planning ability and goal-defining ability, and your feelings, left-hand side of the framework here, are all connected as a system for thinking. So you need to, for those of you who have now got calculators in front of you, multiply box number 1 score times box number 2 times box number 3 times etc. And I am going to ask you at this stage to trust the technology, because you're going to come out with a very high number, okay? Some of you will be sitting there going, it's too big a number. It will be a very high number because, as most of you know, 6 to the power of 10 is a score out of 1,000,000. Okay? So you will have a score in the tens of thousands, maybe the hundreds of thousands. Okay? At this point in time, that's not much use to you. Complexity. So let's go for simplicity. You need to turn that into a percentage. Now, because it is out of 1,000,000, you need to knock off how many decimal points? You need to take your decimal points back, okay, to get it to a score out of 100%. 4 decimal points. Or trust your calculator and do the maths on your calculator. So just as an example, somebody who's sitting there going, oh, that's quite good, I've got 135,000, right? Well, you're now just getting rid of 4 of those decimal points, so it's going to turn out as 13.5. Now, that score is your probability for success today, at this point in time, as it stands. Please don't be depressed, okay? For some of you, that's a lower score that you might have been expecting. But let's just get a reality check on that. That's at this point in time without doing anything else about it. Plus, it's a very simple calculation. If you had 9 out of 10 for every single one of those, your probability for success would only be 55%. So, be relaxed about this. What's far more important to you, I would suggest, is look at each of the different principles and the scores that you have for each of the principles. You're getting some instant feedback right now about where the low marks are, and can you do something about those lower marks? Could you, for example, get a higher score on reason why, if it's something that you can make more important to you? Could you define your goal better? Because if that score increased, then it was going to increase the overall probability of your success. So we just wanted to put in front of you, don't take our word for it about, oh, 7 principles of common sense. Do some work on something that you can write down yourself and get a little bit of probability. What we're about as an organization is about increasing probability. That's all we're about. We do 2 things. We accelerate results and we enable change to happen, make it sustainable. We use this thinking system as an implementation methodology. And what we're going to suggest to you is that now we've moved into a place where we can make the monitoring of this, the implementation of this, digital. So we can help people to not only use these principles in real life on pragmatic work-based projects and things to achieve, but we can monitor progress as we go by using a digital platform that's very easy to identify with. You get more details of that on our stand in C6. But let's go forward with this. I mentioned the common sense angle before. 7 principles of common sense just become common practice. That's all we're about. Because common sense isn't always common practice. So what we have built over the last 18 years is a set of thinking tools and techniques around these principles to allow people to adopt them, to use them day to day, and to get focus on what it is that you want to achieve. So, just mention this to you. What do? We accelerate results and we enable change. How do we do that? Well, first of all, there has to be some sort of knowledge input. There has to be. But knowledge by itself is no good without having context to it. Doesn't matter if I know how to skin a crocodile, because it's not something that I probably need to do each day, all right? There has to be some sort of context. The context then fits with the knowledge and then has to be applied. And our way of working is to do exactly that. And I'm going to give you a little case study on that in just a second. Why? Because we want new behaviors. The whole thing about actually exposing people to knowledge, giving them a context in which to apply it, and then apply it and monitor it, is so that we can get new behaviors. Quick case study for you. We did some work with Cisco Capital a couple of years ago. What did they need as a result? Okay, remember thinking, actions, results. What did they need? It's up there. Let you read it. So let's follow this path. The knowledge that we imparted to them was to enable them to understand our results framework, use it so that they could actually influence the thinking of themselves and others. We're talking about 37 different countries here. Okay, sorry, 11 countries, sorry. 37 countries, apologies. Got 2 numbers in front of me and I'm concentrating on both at the same time, which doesn't work. 11 different functions across those countries. Then we gave them the context, which came from the client themselves. Why is this important to you? What do you need to apply this to? Well, actually what we need to do here is we need to make sure that we've got improvements in the region. And what are those improvements? At the beginning of this whole program, 6 key change priorities were identified for the whole of the region. So communicate it to your staff. This enables everybody to go, I understand what the context is in which I've got to apply this new thinking, this new learning. Application was us helping people to use this, setting business challenges, measuring those challenges over what we use as a methodology, 90-day challenges that get monitored. Now, a few years ago, these were monitored practically, hands-on, face-to-face. Now we have the ability to monitor those digitally, which is why we're here at Learning Tech. So, great. Anybody can stand up and give you a bit of a case study. What you're probably more interested in is, okay, so what was the outcomes? Because that's what I'm interested in. What were the outcomes? So, what were the results? 45 business improvements across the whole of the region. What did they actually turn up as being? We know that thinking applied in the right context gives them a fair go at making improvements. Of course, even that stuff is not interesting to me because I'm a bit of a money man. I want to go, yeah, what's the commercial impact? Commercial impact over that program, 6 and a bit months, $34 million for them, okay? $34 million. And we only charge them $33.5 million. Only joking. So what if access to learning was made more simple? What if measurement of learning was also made more simple? What if the application of learning was made more simple? All of those things together must be good news. Must be. We're not all that interested in complexity, far more interested in taking something that is a very simple concept, applying it and helping people to influence their thinking, because that's where we need people to get to. Absolute simplicity around what it is they want to apply. So, a couple of things at this point. In a minute or two, I'm going to invite any questions that you might want to ask. Oh no, I wasn't prepared for that. I'm preparing you now, okay? Because I'm allowing you 3.5 minutes of questions, right? And anybody who's on the edges is sloping off. My guys are watching you. So you've got a couple of minutes to think of what those questions might be. But before we go there, for those of you who are sort of looking at your probability exercise and going, actually, that's so simple that surely it doesn't really have much credence, it does. Because there's an awareness raising about, do you know what, I think I've got something I want to achieve. At this point in time, I haven't really examined whether or not that's going to be likely to achieve it. We're full of simple diagnostic tools. And one of the things that you can get as a bit of a freebie from us, should you wish it, and some of my colleagues are here, we have a change calculation to enable you to work out what's the cost of you doing nothing in your organization. Not what's the cost of doing something, what's the cost of you doing nothing about changing things in your organization. A very simple calculation, similar in process to that, but actually uses some real numbers. So it's a bit more difficult because you have to think, what are the real numbers in my organization, rather than just the gut feel that you've got about something you want to achieve. So that is enclosed in the little 61-page book that we originally wrote probably about 14 years ago now, about applying some of the stuff that we've learned about thinking to an application that is all to do with enabling change and making change sustainable. So, are there any questions that you would like to ask in an open forum? Or are you more comfortable with going to stand C6 and talking to me, Karen, Paul, Danny, Ricky, individually? Oh. We also do a very simple diagnostic tool about bravery, okay? Only joking. I don't see too many scared people there. Okay, well, one of the things that we do like doing about bringing complexity down to simplicity is giving you time back. So we can also give you some time back. There are some people around the stand who you can talk to about getting some freebies. We're on stand C6, just in case you didn't get my mention of it a couple of times. It's written up there as well. Thank you very much for your interest.